Good evening and good afternoon, music world. John here from What's Spinning, here today with a little something different for this channel. At least I try to do this every year, and I believe that I have. But, you know, when we hit that halfway point through the year, that mid to late June, I like to do a quick video recapping the albums that I have enjoyed the most so far this year. Just kind of a little bit of a quick retrospect to see how this year has been treating us, which it's been a very fruitful one so far. And, yeah, it just kind of happened that today is the day. Not only that, but I am still working on my Swans review. It's coming tomorrow, don't worry. It's a 2-hour album, and I wanted to do it right, so it's coming tomorrow. But with that being said, I just wanted to chat about 10 albums that I believe are the 10 best of the year so far. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in. There's no particular order here. I mean, I just did alphabetical order to make it kind of easy. Also, all of the reviews, the formal reviews, will be linked down below. So without that being said, let's chat about some of my favorites of the year so far. And I want to kick things off with Billy Woods and Kenny Segal's Maps. I mean, leading up to this album, the hype was real, at least for me. I mean, him and Kenny have worked together very effectively in the past. They have a lot of chemistry, and they have pulled no punches on this new album. This is a gritty, dreary, exhausted rap album about life on the road. The highs, the lows, the goods, the bads, coming home after it as well. And it is a really introspective and fascinating journey of an album throughout. I mean, you know what you're getting here. You're getting the very intense, heady, wordy performances from Billy Woods. You are getting the very dusty, old school, sort of rainy day jazzy rap beats from Kenny. And honestly, yeah, it's near perfect. It is a near perfect rap album. It's one of Billy's finest, and he's been on such a roll lately. I mean, the guy for years has been, you know, one of the mainstays of your very gloomy, rainy day rap, but with this album here, he has pulled ahead of the pack entirely. Then I want to give a shout out to the new Caroline Polachek album, Desire I Want to Turn Into You. I mean, ever since the Caroline has kind of, you know, veered off on her own and entered the artsier, more weird, experimental side of pop music, I've been nothing short of impressed. She has a great ability to keep things really super catchy, light on the ears and fun, but also pretty mind-melting and genuinely experimental. And this new album is her biggest and boldest statement to date by far. I mean, this album is an absolute feast for the weirder side of pop music. Caroline on this album makes her own world, this incredibly vibrant, colorful world, and just colors it in front of us. And it is one of the most immense, visual, just genuinely groundbreaking pop records that you are going to hear all year. Then we have a true weirdo stroke of genius. That would be the new Danny Brown and JPEGMAFIA album, Scare in the Hose. And honestly, this is exactly what I was expecting to hear leading up to this album. I knew I was going to love this thing. This thing is a wild-eyed, highly caffeinated, just pop culture flashbang of an album that is just bursting at the seams. But the real story is its chemistry. These two have more chemistry than even I thought they would, and I knew they were going to play off each other. I mean, God, Peggy brings out the absolute weirdest in Danny, and Danny brings out the more aggressive and rowdy side of JPEGMAFIA. I mean, what else can you ask for if you are into the more abrasive and experimental and wild sort of sector of hip-hop? Honestly, it's probably going to be your album of the year. Glitchy beats, warped samples, pop culture references flying at you from all directions. It's really exciting. For another reason, this album is very exciting to me, at least as well. It will be the new Uchis record, Red Moon and Venus, which, you know what, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Since her debut, Isolation, I've been a little cold on Kelly. I, thought her follow-up and the EP that followed were very disappointing, but she has really come into her own with this new record. This is one of the most beautiful and passionate R&B records I've heard in quite some time. There is so much going on, and in her music you're getting so many different genres coming together, but it's a lot more than that. This is her just most beautiful and confident and steamiest album to date by far. Her vocals are absolutely immaculate, and it's all of a sudden bringing out the more adventurous side in Callie as well, which is where I like to hear her. We also have another fantastic R&B record, which is right now my front runner for album of the year, believe it or not, because I just think it's one of the most immaculate and immersive experiences I've heard on any record in years, and that would be the new Kelela album, Raven. I mean, I've had her picked since day one. I have been so immensely impressed with her style, her adventurous side, the production that she hops on, her songwriting, since her very early days, and this album is her biggest and boldest artistic statement to date. It is a deep, lush, cinematic album that dives very into sexual identity, passion, romance. Production from start to finish is crisp, and Kelela's vocals just become bigger and better than ever. It is simply put an experience. And you know what? This next one shouldn't really shock y'all too much if you've been watching the old channel lately. I also have to shout out the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album, PetroDragonic Apocalypse. I mean, I like personally hearing them at their heaviest, their rawest, their most intense, and you know what? That is what we get here in an absolute 56-minute blast of just monolithic songs, constant soloing, and all the camp you could ask for. I mean, the Giz, when they are in full, hellish landscape mode, they can actually pull out some of their best stuff, and honestly, that's what I think this is. I mean, yeah, it's a little bloated, and some of the longer songs might not be for everybody, but this is heavier than most metal I've heard this year, and it's super exciting for me. I think it's one of the best rock records of the year. We also have King Krule's Space Heavy. You know what? I'm going to say this, and it might be blasphemous to some of y'all, but this to me is Archie at his best. This is, I think, the most consistent project he's ever come out with. And yeah, sure, I've enjoyed a lot of his projects, most of his projects, but none of them have just been banger after banger, just consistent track after consistent track, nearly as much as this. It is, sort of spacey, sort of bluesy. I love how just emotionally crushed he comes off throughout. This is a great album. Yeah, a lot of good music, especially in the last 2 weeks, because I also want to shout out this new Killer Mike project, Michael, and I've seen a lot of middle of the road reviews on this album. There's a lot of people that don't enjoy it nearly as much as me, and you know what? I do understand that it is not nearly as bombastic. It doesn't really play to his personality nearly as much as his stuff with Run the Jewels or his rap music album may. But for me, I look at this album and I think this is an album for Killer Mike, one of the most interesting names in modern hip-hop, an absolute legend out of Atlanta, and it dives very deep into his upbringing. There are a lot of tales of his youth, and a lot of them are pretty fascinating, but the beats that he hops on are super classy, and so many of the features from people that I usually don't give a shit about, like Tory Lanez, and a returning feature from Jagged Edge in 2023. There's some weird features here, but somehow they all seem to work, and I just think it's one of the more consistent rap records of the year. If you don't like it, though, I do understand why. Also, want to give a shout out to the new Protomartyr album, Formal Growth in the Desert. This is exactly what I was sitting and hoping for from Protomartyr. After their last album, Ultimate Success Today, all I wanted was a grittier album, a darker album, an album that showed them go back to their animalistic roots, which they absolutely do here. It's one of the more consistent projects in a while. It's just really raw. There's this animalistic side to it that I haven't heard from them since like Relatives and Descent. It's artsy, it's tortured, it's doom impending, and it is so good. And finally, it just does me so much pleasure to chat about this album, especially because I've known that they had this in them for years. I want to give a huge shout out to the new Young Fathers album, Heavy. I mean, this is nothing short of happening in modern art pop, and for years all of the ingredients have been there for Young Fathers, but I never thought that they put out an album that really reached the levels of excitement of their early EPs. And here it is, and it is absolutely immaculate. It is a colorful blast of neo-psych, neo-soul, art pop, alternative hip-hop, and more. And, it's produced so well, and the way these tracks blend together and create this larger-than-life feel, it's just an experience. It's nothing short of an experience, and is easily going to be one of my favorite albums of the year. but these are my favorites of the year so far. I'm curious to see what y'all have been loving this year, so let me know down below what some of your favorites of the year have been. Leave us a like, give us a subscribe, and have a wonderful day, friends.